Hey guys, tonight we find ourselves in the ancient Greek world, standing beneath a sky so vast, so endless that it feels like it could swallow you whole. You gaze up and realize that someone, or rather something, has been tasked with holding this sky above us, the mighty Titan, Atlas. His broad shoulders strain as the heavens rest upon them, his body bearing a weight that would crumble any mortal. And while you probably won't survive such a fate, trust me, it's a lot of pressure. We're here to explore how this eternal burden came to be. Imagine the kind of task that no mortal could ever dream of enduring: the endless heaviness, the solitude, the weight of an entire cosmos balanced on one being's shoulders. Now, Atlas isn't just any Titan. He wasn't one of the many involved in the great battle that shook the foundation of the world, the Titanomachy. You see, Atlas's fate was sealed during this epic war. It wasn't because he was any more or less powerful than the other Titans. No, Atlas was one of the unlucky ones who stood on the losing side of this cosmic battle. The Olympians, led by Zeus, emerged victorious. Atlas, on the other hand, found himself sentenced to carry the heavens for all eternity. While his fellow Titans were either imprisoned in Tartarus or given lesser punishments, Atlas's burden was to be ceaseless. He was chosen to stand as the pillar between the earth and the sky, forever. Now, it's one thing to have the gods decide your fate, but it's another when they decide that you should carry the weight of the entire world. And the thing is, the sky wasn't some easy, light task to bear. Think about the weight of it for a second. Not just the clouds, or the stars, or the sun and moon, but the entire firmament itself. The Greeks envisioned the heavens as something immense, something inescapable. It wasn't just a ceiling above the earth, it was the very boundary of existence. When Zeus condemned Atlas to hold up the sky, he wasn't just giving him a heavy load, he was making him the very boundary of the universe. Historians still argue whether the ancient Greeks truly envisioned the sky as this heavy, almost tangible thing, or if it was just a poetic metaphor. Some suggest that the weight of the sky was more of a symbol, the burden of maintaining order in the universe, the weight of eternity, and the responsibility of holding up existence itself. Others say that the Greeks thought of the sky as a literal weight, a solid mass, ever expanding, yet always held in place by Atlas. The latter is perhaps more believable when you consider the overwhelming nature of the task after all. It wasn't a mere symbolic gesture to hold up something as monumental as the sky. Imagine for a second, if you can, standing where Atlas stands. The weight of the heavens on your back. Not just an exhausting burden, but one that stretches beyond the horizon. Every time you breathe, you feel the pull of this immensity, pressing down, yet never lightening. It's almost as if the entire cosmos is watching you, waiting for you to falter, to give in, and to let go. But Atlas doesn't. He bears the weight, quietly, eternally. The years turn into centuries, the centuries into millennia, and yet the burden doesn't let up. The sky remains as heavy as it was the first day, an unyielding presence on his shoulders. What's fascinating is that, despite the weight of the sky, Atlas remains resolute. There's no mention of him being given the opportunity to escape, no miraculous moment where he gets to shrug off his burden. He is stuck in this task forever. No wonder ancient civilizations told stories like Atlas's. They wanted to remind people of the absolute power of fate, that no matter how strong you are, no matter how much you try to resist, sometimes you just have to endure. The Greeks often wove their myths with an element of cosmic irony, a reminder that no god, no hero, no titan could truly escape the control of fate. They were all subjects to the whims of the gods, at the mercy of powers much greater than themselves. In Atlas's case, the ultimate fate was clear. He would never escape his task. His fate was sealed forever. Now, there's something else that stands out in this myth. Atlas wasn't just a victim of fate, as much as that's what it seems like. His punishment wasn't one of simple revenge. It wasn't as if Zeus hated Atlas and wanted to torture him for his part in the war. In fact, some scholars suggest that Atlas's punishment was far more cosmic than personal. The gods didn't just punish him for losing the war, they made him the bearer of something larger than any individual. The task was meant to be a reminder that there are forces in the universe much greater than the gods, forces that must be respected, forces that must be held. And when we think about it, perhaps this is what makes Atlas's story so resonant. His punishment is one of endurance, of resilience. We often think of punishment as a form of suffering, but Atlas's punishment is different. It's not just about pain or despair. It's about the eternal persistence to carry on, no matter how heavy the load. His fate is a reflection of the burdens we all face, the responsibilities that weigh us down, the tasks we can't escape, no matter how hard we try. And yet, like Atlas, we carry on. Just like him, we bear the weight of the world on our shoulders, sometimes without knowing how much longer we can go. But we keep moving. Atlas might be a titan, but his struggle, in many ways, is our struggle. His resilience is our resilience. As we continue to watch Atlas beneath the vast expanse of sky, let's rewind a bit. You need to understand how it all came to be. What made Atlas the one to bear the sky instead of, say, a more agreeable titan or a wayward Olympian? Well, it all begins with the epic Titanomachy, a war so grand and chaotic that it reshaped the very cosmos. Now, most of the Greek gods and titans were not exactly fond of one another. The Olympians, led by the mighty Zeus, were a younger generation, eager to overthrow their predecessors, the Titans. For centuries, the Titans ruled the cosmos, each one carving out their own dominion. Atlas, one of the prominent Titans, was the son of the Titan Iapetus and the ocean nymph Clymene. He wasn't some minor figure in this struggle. No, he was a major player. Yet, when the dust settled from the climactic battle, Atlas found himself among the losers. Zeus had decisively defeated the Titans, and they were either cast into Tartarus or given brutal, unrelenting punishments. But here's where it gets interesting. You'd think that the Titans, who had been the deities of the cosmos for so long, would have been able to hold their own against the younger Olympians, right? But the Olympians, with their unified front, their ingenuity, and the favor of the fates, crushed the Titans. It's one of those moments in mythology where you realize that no matter how powerful you think you are, there's always someone younger, someone quicker, and someone who might just have the edge. For Atlas, it wasn't just about strength, it was about timing and fate. He found himself on the wrong side of history. Historians still argue whether Atlas's role in the Titanomachy was truly a betrayal or just a miscalculation. Some say Atlas fought fiercely for the Titans, standing tall alongside Cronus and the others, but the odds were stacked against them. Others argue that his punishment was a cruel cosmic joke, as his defiance was likely the cause of his fate. Either way, when the Olympians emerged victorious, Atlas was left to face the harsh consequences of their triumph. The beauty of Greek mythology lies in how it doesn't just describe battles of strength, it dives into the complexities of the human condition. Take Atlas, for example. He wasn't just a brute force in this war. He was a thinker, a strategist, yet he found himself on the losing side. When the battle was over, he wasn't cast aside like many of the Titans. Instead, he was chosen for a fate far more cruel. He was sentenced to hold up the sky, to carry the heavens for all eternity, with no hope of respite, no hope of return. You might think that being sent to Tartarus, the ancient Greek underworld, would be a much easier fate. After all, there's nothing harder than spending an eternity with your own thoughts. But Atlas wasn't just locked away in some dark pit. No, he was given the task of holding up the heavens, the vast, endless expanse of the sky. This was no simple task. His punishment wasn't just one of isolation, it was one of purpose. Atlas was given the weight of the entire universe to bear, and he had to do it alone. While other Titans might have been chained or imprisoned, Atlas was set apart, forced to bear witness to the sky above, never able to escape, never able to find peace. And that's the essence of Atlas's punishment, the cosmic irony of it all. For the ancient Greeks, fate wasn't just about the punishment, it was about the eternal consequences. Sure, the gods punished you, but the real lesson was that fate would not be denied. Atlas wasn't simply punished for his actions. He was punished for the war that was fought and lost, for the generation that failed, and for the fact that the Titans were doomed to be replaced by the Olympians. This punishment wasn't just for Atlas himself. It was a message to the entire pantheon of gods and Titans. The cosmos was forever shifting, and no one, no matter how mighty, was exempt from its power. So there Atlas stands, beneath the weight of the sky, knowing full well that the task he carries out will never end. There's no relief, no end to the task. It is not just about the sheer physical burden of holding the heavens, but about the emotional and spiritual toll it must take. Imagine, if you will, the endless loneliness of such a task. The sky is massive, stretching far beyond what you can see. The stars twinkle above you, but they offer no solace. There's no companion, no other being to share the burden with. The pressure, both physical and mental, would be enough to break anyone. Yet Atlas stands, the symbol of perseverance and unyielding strength. The Greek gods were often portrayed as capricious and cruel, yet Atlas's punishment was, in some ways, more than just cruelty. It was a statement. The gods didn't just want to punish him. They wanted to ensure that he would never forget his role in the cosmic order. The sky, ever present and immovable, became a permanent marker of his fate, a mark that could never be erased. And so, Atlas became more than just a titan condemned to a terrible fate. He became a symbol of the eternal struggle between fate and free will, a symbol of the enduring burden of existence, a symbol of the weight that we all carry, even when we feel that we can't go on. Now that we understand the background of Atlas's punishment, let's turn our focus to the sheer immensity of his task. Imagine the weight of the sky pressing down on you, not just a metaphorical weight, but a tangible, unyielding force. You might be thinking, sure, it's tough to carry something heavy for a few minutes, but what about years, centuries, millennia? This is the cruelest part of Atlas's fate, the endurance, the relentlessness of the task. It's not just about the burden. It's about the unbroken continuity, the fact that the weight doesn't get any lighter, no matter how much time passes. The ancient Greeks didn't view the sky as a simple, passive element. They saw it as a living, breathing force, full of stars, celestial bodies, and cosmic events. The heavens were not just a blanket of air, they were the very domain of the gods, home to Zeus, Hera, Apollo, and the rest of the Olympians. The sky was where the stars and the moon hung, where the sun rose and set, marking the passage of time. And Atlas's job wasn't simply to hold up the sky in some abstract sense. He was tasked with keeping it in place, ensuring that the heavens never fell to the earth. The sky, as massive as it is, couldn't just float aimlessly. Someone in this case, Atlas, had to be responsible for maintaining its position forever. As the years stretch into centuries, and the centuries into millennia, you can imagine the toll this takes on Atlas. The sky isn't just heavy in a physical sense. It's heavy in every sense of the word. The constant pressure would wear down even the strongest of beings. You might feel the first few hours, the first few days. But what about after a few centuries? What about after a few thousand years? The mental fatigue of this task must have been just as exhausting as the physical weight. But that's the thing with Atlas. His punishment wasn't just about the physical. It was a constant mental challenge, an endurance test that stretched the limits of his willpower. Each moment would have felt like an eternity. Think about it. Atlas had no breaks. He couldn't just sit down, stretch his legs, or take a nap. The sky was always there, always pressing down, always a reminder of the weight of the task. He wasn't allowed the luxury of respite or rest. This wasn't a shift where you could punch out and leave your responsibilities behind. No, Atlas was stuck with this burden for all eternity. And while he wasn't alone in this punishment, there were other figures in Greek mythology, like Sisyphus, who also endured eternal tasks. Atlas's punishment was different. His wasn't just about endless repetition. It was about holding something that, by its very nature, couldn't be put down. The unyielding nature of Atlas's burden is what makes his punishment so unique in Greek mythology. The gods may have been cruel, but they were rarely so relentless in their demands. Most other figures in Greek mythology had at least a fleeting hope of redemption or release, but not Atlas. His burden is as infinite as the heavens themselves. He cannot escape. He cannot stop. There's no light at the end of the tunnel, only more sky to carry, more weight to bear. This immensity, this unending pressure, gives Atlas's story a tragic quality that echoes throughout mythology. There's something deeply human about it, something that connects us to this ancient titan. We may not carry the literal weight of the sky, but how many of us have had moments where it felt like the weight of the world was pressing down on us? How many times have we faced responsibilities or struggles that seemed endless, that seemed to stretch on without any relief? Atlas's burden is extreme, but it's also a reminder of how we all face our own challenges, no matter how big or small. And yet, like Atlas, we persist. There's a curious irony to Atlas's position. As the one who carries the heavens, he's often depicted as the one with the greatest strength. But is it strength if you have no choice but to carry the burden? Is strength defined by the ability to endure, or is it something more? In a sense, Atlas's story challenges our perceptions of power. He isn't powerful because he can lift the sky. He's powerful because he never gives up, never stops, no matter how impossible the task seems. His strength lies not in the physical act of holding up the heavens, but in his unbroken resolve. And maybe that's what makes Atlas one of the most tragic yet inspiring figures in all of mythology. His punishment was not just about physical endurance, but about the ability to endure in the face of an unrelenting, impossible task. In some ways, Atlas's burden mirrors the struggles of life itself. We all have moments where the weight of the world feels like it's pressing down on us, moments where it seems impossible to go on. But like Atlas, we keep going. We keep moving forward, one step at a time, even when it feels like we can't take another breath. The sky may never get lighter, but we continue to hold it up, if only to prove that we can. Historians still debate whether the ancient Greeks envisioned Atlas's task as one of pure punishment, or if they saw it as a symbol of something more profound. Perhaps the idea that enduring hardship is what makes us truly strong. Atlas's task wasn't to succeed. It was to persevere, to carry on when there was no hope of success, when there was no end in sight. And in that, his story is timeless. It's not just a myth about a titan carrying the heavens. It's a myth about the human spirit, about the ability to carry on when the weight of the world feels unbearable. Now, as we watch Atlas endure, his shoulders bearing the heavens without so much as a moment of respite, it's hard not to feel a deep sense of sympathy for him. The eternal solitude, the weight, the endless monotony, it's almost too much to imagine. And yet in Greek mythology, even the harshest punishments sometimes have a glimmer of hope, a tiny crack where the light can seep in. And for Atlas, that moment of hope comes in the form of Heracles. You might know Heracles, or Hercules, as he's often called in Roman mythology, for his incredible strength and his famous 12 labors. But Heracles wasn't just about brute force. He was also known for his cleverness and wit. And in the myth of Atlas, it's Heracles' cunning that shifts the balance of fate, even if just for a moment. Heracles was given the daunting task of retrieving the golden apples from the garden of the Hesperides, which, as you might imagine, was no easy feat. These apples were guarded by nymphs, and the location of the garden itself was a closely guarded secret. But Heracles, ever the problem solver, knew that the only way to succeed was to get help from someone who knew the way. And who better to help than Atlas, who not only knew the location, but was the only one capable of withstanding the task of retrieving the apples. But there was a catch, a big one. Heracles would have to deal with Atlas's burden while Atlas was away. When Heracles meets Atlas, the conversation starts with a simple proposition. Heracles wants Atlas's help to retrieve the apples, and in exchange, Atlas can take a break from his eternal task. It sounds like a fair deal, doesn't it? Atlas, clearly exhausted by his endless labor, agrees. So, in a moment of rare relief, Atlas decides to step away from his celestial post. He thinks, finally, a break, a chance to rest. Heracles, clever as ever, steps in to hold the sky in Atlas's place. But here's where the trick comes into play. Atlas, after retrieving the golden apples, plans to leave Heracles with the sky as a kind of permanent replacement. Imagine Atlas's joy as he thinks, I can finally rest and be free of this crushing weight. But just as Atlas is about to hand over the responsibility for good, Heracles pulls a fast one. Heracles agrees to hold the sky only temporarily, while Atlas goes and retrieves the apples, but he asks Atlas to take the sky back as soon as he returns. And that's where the trap springs. As soon as Atlas takes the sky back, he finds himself once again stuck with the very weight he thought he had escaped. The clever Heracles had outwitted him. Atlas had been so eager to take a break, to be free of the burden, that he forgot one crucial element of the task. The sky was his responsibility, and no one could bear it for him for long. It's a fascinating moment of trickery in Greek mythology, where the roles are reversed. The mighty Titan, who had been carrying the weight of the heavens for centuries, is outwitted by the hero, whose strength comes not just from muscle, but from wit. Heracles' trick was not one of physical power, but of strategy. It wasn't about being stronger than Atlas. It was about outthinking him. In a world of divine strength and overwhelming power, Heracles' victory highlights the power of the mind over raw might. But let's pause here for a moment. What does this moment really say about Atlas's situation? It's not just about being deceived or outwitted. It's about how desperately Atlas longed for freedom, so much so that he was willing to trust Heracles with the heavens, if only for a brief respite. Atlas was tired, exhausted. He had endured the weight of the sky for what seemed like an eternity, and for just a brief moment, he allowed himself to believe in the possibility of escape. But this hope was fleeting, and the burden he thought he could set down quickly returned. This moment also reveals something more about Atlas's character. He isn't a mindless brute, incapable of reflection. He's a titan who is weary, who feels the crushing weight of his task and yearns for release. His decision to trust Heracles, though it ultimately leads to his further torment, shows that even the mightiest beings have their limits. They too need rest, and they too long for an escape from the burdens they bear. Heracles, for all his cleverness, doesn't just outwit Atlas in a playful sense. He reminds us that no matter how strong you are, sometimes you need a break. And when you're stuck in a situation as overwhelming as Atlas's, that break can seem like the only way out. Heracles' trick, though it may seem like a simple trickster's move, reveals the deeper psychology behind Atlas's punishment. Even immortals can tire. Even gods and titans need rest. In many ways, this part of Atlas's story becomes one of the most poignant. For as much as we view Atlas as a figure of endurance, as a symbol of unyielding strength, this moment of weakness reveals the human side of the myth. We too experience these moments where we are so desperate for relief that we're willing to trust someone, even if it's not the wisest decision. Atlas's mistake was not in trusting Heracles. It was in thinking that his burden could be shared, that he could find a way out of his eternal task. Heracles' moment of cleverness doesn't just serve to punish Atlas, it also serves as a reminder that we can't always escape our fate. Even when we think we've found a way out, the weight of our responsibilities often comes rushing back. It's a reminder that the world doesn't always let us rest, even when we need it most. Atlas's story and his moment of respite illustrates the impossible nature of ultimate escape. Even when we think we've found a way to lay down our burdens, sometimes they're waiting for us as soon as we turn around. So there we are, watching Atlas once again struggling beneath the crushing weight of the heavens, his brief respite a distant memory. The trick of Heracles might have been clever, but it doesn't take away from the overwhelming sense of defeat that Atlas must feel, knowing that his punishment is, once again, set in stone. And as the centuries stretch on, one has to wonder, does the weight ever get easier to carry? Can anyone truly get used to such an unimaginable burden? The thing about enduring suffering, whether it's physical, emotional, or psychological, is that it often becomes a part of you. The initial shock of a burden might be unbearable, but over time, you learn to adjust. You adapt, you find ways to survive. And yet, no matter how much time passes, no matter how much you adapt, the burden is never truly gone. For Atlas, his punishment was one of sheer endurance, and no matter how many years or centuries passed, the sky never got any lighter. The weight of the heavens remained the same, unyielding, constant. Now, in the grand tapestry of Greek mythology, Atlas's story doesn't exist in a vacuum. The gods and heroes around him all have their own trials, their own punishments, and their own burdens to bear. But Atlas's fate is particularly harsh, not just because of the weight of the sky, but because of the eternal nature of his task. He wasn't given a finite punishment, like Sisyphus, who could at least see the end of his labor a boulder that would always roll back down. Atlas was sentenced to bear the weight of the heavens forever. No rest, no escape. This eternal nature of Atlas's burden sets him apart from other figures in Greek mythology who were punished in similar ways. Take Prometheus, for example, who was chained to a rock and had his liver eaten by an eagle every day, only for it to regenerate overnight. Prometheus's punishment, while excruciating, had a cyclical nature. It was cruel, but there was a sense that it would eventually end. Atlas, however, is not granted even the possibility of respite. His fate is to bear the weight of the cosmos until the end of time, with no end in sight. Yet there is a certain poetic aspect to Atlas's endless struggle. His punishment isn't just about endurance, it's also about balance. The heavens, as massive and unyielding as they are, cannot simply exist without support. The world in Greek mythology requires a balance between the forces of the earth and the sky, between the gods and the titans. Atlas, in a way, becomes a symbol of that balance, the constant force that holds the universe together. His burden isn't just punishment, it's also a responsibility. He doesn't just hold the sky for the sake of his own suffering. He holds it to maintain the cosmic order. Without him, the world would fall apart. The stars would crash to Earth. The sky would collapse into the sea. It is Atlas who ensures that everything remains in its proper place. This brings us to a deeper, philosophical layer of Atlas's myth. The idea of burden as responsibility is something that resonates beyond the realm of mythology. We all have our own heavens to carry our own burdens, our own responsibilities that feel impossible at times. And much like Atlas, we often feel that these responsibilities are unyielding, that there is no end to them. But in Atlas's case, his burden is not meaningless. It is his job, his task, to ensure that the universe remains in balance. He may be punished, yes, but he also plays a vital role in maintaining the order of the world. His strength, then, is not just physical. It is moral and cosmic. It's a reminder that even the most impossible burdens can serve a greater purpose. Now, you might be wondering, does Atlas ever get a moment of relief, even just for a second? Is there any possibility for him to find a way out of this endless punishment? Interestingly enough, there are some versions of the myth that offer a potential glimpse of hope for Atlas. You see, there is a story in which Heracles, once again, plays a part. This time, instead of tricking Atlas, he helps him in a different way. Heracles, as part of his 12 labors, frees Atlas from his burden, but only temporarily. In some versions of the myth, Heracles offers to take the heavens from Atlas for a while, allowing the Titan to rest. But even this act of mercy comes with a price. While Atlas does get a brief reprieve, he is still bound by the weight of his punishment. And once again, his moment of freedom is fleeting. This brief period of relief, though, adds an interesting layer to the myth. It suggests that, despite his eternal punishment, there may be moments when even Atlas can feel the weight of the sky lessen, if only for a brief time. These fleeting moments of relief serve as a reminder that even in the harshest of fates, there are moments of respite, even if they are short-lived. And perhaps it's these small moments, however fleeting, that give Atlas the strength to carry on. It's a reminder that even in our own struggles, we can find brief moments of peace, moments where the weight of the world feels just a little bit lighter. But these moments don't last forever. They come and go, just like the shifting heavens above. So in the end, Atlas's story is not just one of unending suffering. It's a story of balance, of endurance, and of the fleeting moments of rest that we all seek in our own lives. His burden, though impossible, serves a purpose, and his story is a reminder that no matter how heavy the sky may be, we can all find a way to carry it. As Atlas remains locked in his eternal task, it's hard not to reflect on the deeper meaning of his suffering. We've explored the cosmic weight he carries, his fleeting moments of respite, and his occasional brushes with freedom. But there's another layer to his story that makes it so enduring and poignant. Atlas's punishment isn't just about physical endurance, but about how he comes to represent something far more universal, the theme of fate itself. While Atlas may be punished, his journey speaks to something that transcends his specific myth. It speaks to how all beings, whether mortal or divine, are subject to forces far beyond their control. Now, in many mythological stories, the gods often give mortals or titans these impossible tasks. And yet, even when these beings are punished for their actions, they sometimes retain their sense of agency. But with Atlas, there's no real sense of choice in his punishment. It's a stark contrast to many of the other figures in Greek mythology. In some cases, like with Sisyphus, the punishments are tailored to fit the crimes. Sisyphus's endless boulder rolling was a reflection of his own deceitfulness and cunning. In Atlas's case, his punishment feels more like a cosmic decision, something far more unavoidable. Atlas wasn't just punished for a personal failure, he was burdened because of his involvement in the larger struggle between the Olympians and the Titans. His punishment wasn't a personal choice, but a direct consequence of the war that shaped the course of history in the Greek mythos. This brings us to a crucial point in understanding Atlas's place in Greek mythology. The story of the Titanomachy was not just about power, but about the shifting of cosmic balance. The Olympians were young, fresh, and ready to replace the old order, but Atlas, representing the Titans, was tasked with holding on to the old ways. In his punishment, we see a metaphor for the cycles of life, where old generations are replaced by new ones, where what is ancient and established must be overturned for the world to continue moving forward. The old gods, like the Titans, held incredible power. But with power came arrogance, and with arrogance came defeat. In a sense, the punishment of Atlas represents the inevitability of change. The Olympians, despite being newer and seemingly less experienced, were destined to rule. They were the future, Atlas was the past. The weight of the heavens, in this light, becomes a symbol of the old ways, a weight that must be carried until it's time for the old order to crumble and make way for the new. And in this light, Atlas's role becomes even more symbolic. He is the living representation of a world that no longer has a place in the new universe. But that doesn't mean Atlas's struggle is meaningless. Far from it. Even in his eternal punishment, Atlas becomes a symbol of something far more profound: the ability to endure, the refusal to give in to the forces that would seek to break him. While Atlas's punishment may seem like a loss, a defeat, it's also a testament to his strength. In Greek mythology, gods and titans don't just represent physical power, they also represent ideas and values that have an impact beyond their individual fates. The endurance of Atlas is something we can all relate to. It's easy to think of Atlas as simply a mythological figure who was punished for his actions. But there's an underlying message in his story that reaches into the fabric of human experience. How many of us have faced burdens that felt too heavy to bear? How many of us have struggled under the weight of responsibilities, expectations, or even just the overwhelming tide of life? And how many of us, despite feeling overwhelmed, continue to stand, continue to bear that weight, day after day? Atlas's punishment may be eternal, but in his strength and perseverance, there's something deeply human. Historians still argue whether the myth of Atlas was meant to convey a message about fate or endurance. Was Atlas's punishment a reflection of the Greeks' belief in the inevitability of fate, that no one, no matter how strong, could escape their destiny? Or was it about the value of endurance, of strength, of bearing your burdens without complaint, no matter how long the journey may last? The answer, as with many things in Greek mythology, is likely both. Atlas's story serves as a reminder that fate is a force we cannot control. But how we respond to it, how we endure in the face of it, is what defines us. And even though we've talked about the weight Atlas carries, his struggle isn't simply about what's on his back. It's about what's in his heart, what's in his spirit. Atlas could have given up at any time. He could have dropped the heavens, let the world crumble beneath him. But he didn't. And that refusal to give in, that silent defiance, becomes a defining characteristic of his myth. In the end, Atlas's punishment is not just the weight of the sky, it's the weight of eternity itself. It's the knowledge that his task will never end, that his burden will never lighten. But still, he carries it. Still, he stands. So, let's pause and think about what this means. Atlas, despite being trapped in this endless cycle of struggle, never gives up. His burden is his fate, but it doesn't define him completely. In a way, Atlas becomes a symbol of strength because of the way he endures, not because he triumphs. He's not a god of victory or of success, but a god of persistence, of resilience. His punishment, though severe, shapes him into something more than just a titan. It makes him an enduring figure in the mythology, one that continues to teach us about the power of perseverance. The heavens may weigh heavily on his shoulders, but Atlas never lets them crush him. In that, we find something timeless, something that resonates with each of us as we carry our own burdens. Now, let's take a deeper look at Atlas's situation. As we've seen, his punishment is unyielding, unrelenting, and eternal. But as much as we may sympathize with him, it's important to remember that there's a certain dignity in his enduring. He's not just a victim of fate. He becomes a symbol of something far larger, a force of nature, if you will. And in this way, Atlas's story, while tragic, also embodies a certain heroism. Not in the traditional sense of vanquishing monsters or defeating enemies, but in the quiet heroism of enduring an impossible task when no one is watching. It's easy to forget that enduring something for eternity isn't simply about strength. It's about mental fortitude. Atlas, despite the endless weight of the sky, continues to hold it. He doesn't succumb to the pressure, even though there is no end in sight. And that's where the true complexity of his character shines through. As much as his fate seems like one of punishment, there is also a sense of purpose that comes with carrying this weight. Whether or not Atlas chose this path, whether or not he feels that he deserves this fate, the sky and his responsibility is something that he must uphold. The gods of Greek mythology didn't simply dole out punishments based on power or will. They assigned them based on balance, morality, and, in some cases, necessity. Atlas was never meant to be a passive figure. His strength wasn't meant to lie solely in his ability to lift the heavens, but in his capacity to maintain that balance, to ensure that the cosmic order of the world remained intact. In that sense, Atlas becomes a linchpin in the world's functioning, a foundational figure upon whose shoulders the entire cosmos rests. But here's the thing. Atlas never asked for this role. He didn't choose to bear the weight of the sky. Yet, once the gods made their decision, he was forced into it, much like many of us are forced into the roles we find ourselves in. How many times have we been thrust into situations that felt beyond our control, where we had no choice but to bear the weight, whatever it was? Whether it's a family responsibility, a work obligation, or a life challenge that seems insurmountable, Atlas's story is a reflection of our own struggles. His burden may be cosmic in nature, but the emotion that underpins his task, the isolation, the longing for relief, is deeply human. It's also worth considering the irony in Atlas's eternal punishment. Despite being a titan, someone who is meant to be strong and powerful, Atlas is placed in a situation where his power has little effect on his fate. His physical strength is of no use when it comes to his ultimate task. It's not about strength in the traditional sense, it's about the power to endure. The power to keep going despite the overwhelming nature of what he faces. This idea of endurance is something that is incredibly relatable, particularly in a world that often feels like it's full of endless tasks and responsibilities. Atlas's role challenges the notion of strength itself, shifting the focus from brute force to resilience. Now, let's think about the long-term impact of Atlas's fate. What happens to a figure like him, caught in an eternal struggle, constantly under pressure? It's easy to assume that a task as heavy as Atlas's would eventually break a person. And in many ways, Atlas's fate seems to imply just that. There's no end to his journey, no catharsis, no reward, just the burden, forever. However, it's this very endlessness that gives Atlas's story its power. He doesn't break. Over the centuries, we watch him, not as someone defeated by his task, but as someone who carries on, no matter how heavy the sky becomes. This idea of perseverance in the face of an unyielding burden is perhaps the most relatable aspect of Atlas's myth. How many of us have felt like we were carrying the weight of the world on our shoulders? Whether it's the demands of life, the expectations of others, or even the pressures we place on ourselves, there are moments when the world seems heavy. But the story of Atlas reminds us that even in those moments, there is strength in carrying on. It's not about how fast you go, or whether you can lift the weight with ease. It's about holding on, about continuing, even when there's no end in sight. In Greek mythology, the gods often represent different aspects of human existence. Zeus represents the power of the sky, Athena symbolizes wisdom, and Aphrodite embodies love. But Atlas, as a titan, represents something far more elusive, the enduring nature of the human spirit. While gods and goddesses come and go, Atlas's punishment is constant. He is the symbol of unbroken resilience, an embodiment of the strength to endure what seems impossible. In that sense, Atlas is as much a part of the human experience as any of the gods or heroes. His story isn't one of glory or triumph, but of persistence and resolve. And in a world where endurance is often required more than victory, perhaps Atlas's story resonates more than we realize. Interestingly, Atlas's myth also serves as a reminder that sometimes we're called to carry burdens that aren't our own. The weight of the sky wasn't something Atlas chose, but it was something that in the end defined him. In much the same way, many of us take on responsibilities that don't always feel like our own. Whether it's the expectations placed on us by society, family, or ourselves, we often find ourselves bearing the weight of things we didn't choose, things that seem to have no end. But what makes us strong isn't the weight we carry, it's how we carry it. And like Atlas, we carry on, even when the burden seems too heavy to bear. Let's take a moment to step back and examine the broader implications of Atlas's eternal task in Greek mythology. The story of Atlas is not merely about the heavy burden he carries, but about the very nature of cosmic order and the roles that individuals, gods, and titans play within it. As we've seen, Atlas was condemned to hold the heavens up, a task seemingly impossible in its sheer weight and duration. But his punishment also represents something more profound, a reflection of the cycles of the universe, the shifting of power, and the ever-changing relationships between the old and the new. Atlas, in many ways, becomes a living symbol of the old world. The Titans were the original gods, the ones who ruled before the Olympians came to power. And in the mythology, the Titanomachy, the great battle between the Olympians and the Titans, was a dramatic shift of cosmic power. The Olympians, with Zeus at the helm, defeated the Titans and established a new order. But while the Olympians were victorious, the Titans were not entirely vanquished. Some, like Atlas, were given eternal punishments, forced to carry the weight of their own defeat. In this light, Atlas's role as the bearer of the sky is not just a punishment. It's a reminder of the cyclical nature of power. The old gods, the Titans, are still present in the world, but they are no longer the rulers. Instead, they must endure, watching as the new generation of gods, the Olympians, take charge. Atlas's task is a symbol of this cosmic shift. The Titans, once mighty and all-powerful, are now forced to bear the weight of their past actions. They cannot escape their fate, no matter how hard they try. This idea of the old being replaced by the new, of one generation giving way to the next, is a theme that runs throughout mythology and resonates with us in the modern world. We all face moments when we must let go of the past, when the old order must give way to something new. In some ways, Atlas's story can be seen as a reflection of this inevitable cycle. The sky he holds is not just a physical burden. It's also a representation of the past, a past that must be carried and upheld, no matter how heavy it becomes. But Atlas's story isn't just about the transition of power. It's also about the idea of legacy. Atlas, despite his punishment, has left a lasting impact on the world. His name has endured for centuries, his image immortalized in art and literature. Even though he is doomed to carry the heavens forever, he has become a symbol of resilience, of endurance, and of the strength to carry on, no matter how difficult the task. In many ways, Atlas's legacy is not defined by the weight he carries, but by the way he carries it. He becomes a figure that represents not just the burden of the past, but the ability to endure and overcome. In Greek mythology, many of the gods and heroes are remembered for their triumphs. Heracles, for instance, is remembered for his strength and his 12 labors. Achilles is remembered for his role in the Trojan War. But Atlas's legacy is different. His legacy is not about victory, but about persistence, about holding on when it feels like everything is against you. And in a world where so many myths focus on the glory of success, Atlas's story stands out as one of quiet strength. His is a story not of conquest, but of endurance in the face of overwhelming odds. Now, let's zoom out and take a look at how Atlas's myth fits into the larger narrative of Greek mythology. Throughout these stories, there are numerous figures who embody the idea of carrying burdens. Whether it's Sisyphus with his endless boulder, Prometheus with his liver-eating eagle, or even Heracles with his labors, the theme of enduring hardships is a constant. But what sets Atlas apart is the scope of his burden. While others may endure torturous or difficult tasks, Atlas's punishment is cosmic in scale. He isn't just carrying a physical load, he's holding up the very fabric of existence, the very structure of the world. In a sense, Atlas's myth provides a lens through which we can examine the nature of suffering and responsibility. His burden is not just one of physical endurance, it is one of moral and existential weight. He doesn't just carry the sky because the gods told him to. He carries it because the world needs him to. The heavens would fall without him. The universe would collapse. In this way, Atlas's punishment becomes a reflection of the interconnectedness of all things, the way that every action, every being, every part of the universe is linked together. His burden is not just his own, it is shared by all who live in the world beneath the sky. In the grand scheme of Greek mythology, Atlas's fate is a reminder that sometimes the weight we bear is not just our own, but a reflection of the world around us. He is the cosmic figure who stands as the pillar between the earth and the sky, the one who ensures that the heavens do not fall and that the world remains in balance. And while his story is one of eternal struggle, it is also one of profound importance. Without Atlas, the world would crumble. Without his endurance, the very structure of the universe would collapse. So, while Atlas's punishment may seem cruel and endless, there is something deeply significant about the role he plays. He is not just a symbol of suffering. He is a symbol of the essential role each of us plays in the world around us. Even when the burden feels too heavy to bear, even when the weight of the world seems unbearable, Atlas teaches us that our role in the universe is crucial. We may not be able to escape our burdens, but we can carry them with dignity, knowing that in doing so, we play a part in keeping the world in balance. As we near the end of Atlas's long, unyielding journey, it's important to take a step back and consider the legacy of his punishment. The weight he carries is not just a burden, it is also a symbol. It represents more than just the suffering of one titan. It symbolizes the struggle inherent in existence itself. The sky, with all its stars and endless expanse, weighs heavily on Atlas's shoulders, but it also represents the weight of the human condition, the constant push against forces beyond our control, the endurance required to carry on even when the road ahead seems impossible. The fascinating thing about Atlas's myth is that, in some versions, his punishment is not simply an eternal sentence of suffering. While he is doomed to bear the heavens forever, Atlas's story also includes the possibility of redemption, but not in the way one might expect. Unlike other myths where the hero achieves a moment of triumph or victory, Atlas's narrative is more subtle. It's a story of how endurance can be its own form of victory, how simply continuing in the face of overwhelming odds is a form of triumph. Historians and scholars have long debated the true meaning of Atlas's punishment. Is it a cautionary tale about the consequences of defying the gods? Or is it a reflection of the Greek belief in fate and the inevitable passage of time? Perhaps it's a combination of both. On one hand, Atlas's punishment serves as a reminder of the immense power of the gods, their ability to shape the cosmos to their will. On the other hand, his story speaks to the inevitability of fate and the cycles of life and death. The Titans, though mighty and powerful, were eventually replaced by the Olympians, a new generation of gods who were destined to rule. But in the process, they too would face the same cycles of birth, struggle, and death. The unyielding nature of Atlas's punishment also touches on the idea of generational change. Just as the Titans were replaced by the Olympians, so too will the Olympians eventually give way to new powers, new forces. Atlas's role as the eternal bearer of the heavens serves as a metaphor for the burden of time itself, the way each generation must carry the weight of the past, while also striving to create something new. Atlas is not just a figure of punishment. He is a symbol of the passage of time, the eternal cycle of change and renewal. It's worth noting that Atlas's story does not take place in isolation. He is part of a larger family of titans, and many of his fellow titans faced similarly harsh fates. Some, like Prometheus, were punished for defying the gods in their own ways. Others were cast into the depths of Tartarus, never to see the light of day again. But Atlas's fate is different. His punishment is not about imprisonment, it's about endurance. It's not about being locked away in darkness, it's about standing in the open, exposed to the infinite weight of the heavens above, forever bearing the load without any hope of respite. In some ways, this makes Atlas's punishment even more profound. It's not just about the physical burden, it's about the psychological and emotional toll of carrying that weight for eternity. There's a certain mental anguish that comes with endless endurance. While Sisyphus's task is endless repetition, and Prometheus's is eternal torment, Atlas's task is one of solitary perseverance. He is not just carrying the weight of the sky, he is carrying the weight of isolation, of being separated from the world he once knew, of bearing the cosmic burden without any companion to share the load. And yet, there's something deeply beautiful in Atlas's story. His enduring spirit, his refusal to succumb to the pressure, has made him a lasting symbol in both ancient and modern cultures. He is often depicted in art and literature as the embodiment of strength and resilience. In fact, some interpretations of his myth suggest that Atlas's burden, while it may seem like a punishment, is also a form of responsibility, a responsibility that is essential to the functioning of the cosmos. Without Atlas, the heavens would fall, the stars would scatter, and the order of the universe would collapse. This brings us to a key point. Atlas's story is not just about the weight of the sky, it's about the necessity of that weight. The heavens are not a burden simply because they are heavy. They are a burden because they must be held in place. In Greek mythology, the gods often represent the balance of forces in the universe. The sky, as vast and unyielding as it is, represents order, structure, and the passage of time. Atlas's role, then, is not just to bear the weight of the heavens, but to maintain the very structure of the universe. His punishment, while painful and unending, is also a cosmic necessity. In the end, what makes Atlas's myth so powerful is that it resonates with the fundamental truths of human existence. We all face burdens in our lives, whether physical, emotional, or existential. And like Atlas, we often feel like we are carrying the weight of the world on our shoulders. But the story of Atlas reminds us that our burdens, while heavy, are also a part of who we are. They shape us, they define us, and in many ways, they give us meaning. Atlas's punishment may be eternal, but his endurance makes him a symbol of strength, resilience, and the capacity to carry on even when the weight seems unbearable. And as Atlas stands beneath the heavens, forever enduring, his story becomes not just one of suffering, but one of triumph. It's the triumph of persistence, the triumph of endurance, and the triumph of continuing on, no matter the cost. As we approach the end of Atlas's eternal burden, it's time to consider his ultimate legacy, not just as a figure in Greek mythology, but as a symbol of resilience and endurance. The myth of Atlas has resonated through the centuries, shaping how we think about strength, suffering, and responsibility. His tale is one of cosmic scale, yes, but it's also deeply personal. The weight of the heavens, the endless solitude, the unyielding nature of his task. These are all things that echo in our own lives. In one sense, Atlas is a tragic figure. He's not just punished for his role in the Titanomachy, he's also made to carry the weight of a universe that he didn't create, a sky that has no end. The weight of the heavens isn't just a physical burden, it's a mental one, an emotional one. Imagine being told that you must bear the weight of something so vast, so immense, for eternity. There's no escape, no reprieve. There's no moment when Atlas can set the heavens down and rest. But then again, perhaps that's the very essence of his fate. To carry on, even when it feels like there's no end in sight. And while the story of Atlas may seem grim, it's not devoid of meaning. The very fact that he continues to bear this unimaginable burden speaks to something far deeper about the nature of human existence. Atlas's myth isn't just about punishment, it's about perseverance, about finding the strength to endure, even when the weight of the world feels unbearable. His tale is a reminder that sometimes the true measure of strength lies not in how much we lift or how far we go, but in our ability to persist in the face of overwhelming odds. In a sense, Atlas represents all of us. We all have burdens to bear, whether they're personal, familial, or societal. We all have our own heavens to carry. But like Atlas, we find a way to keep going. We may not carry the literal weight of the sky, but we bear the weight of responsibility, of duty, of expectations. And while these burdens can feel crushing at times, they also give us purpose, direction, and meaning. In Atlas's case, his burden, while heavy, is essential to the balance of the universe. Without him, the sky would fall, the stars would scatter, and chaos would reign. Similarly, the burdens we carry may seem overwhelming, but they are part of the fabric of our lives, helping to shape who we are and the world around us. But as much as Atlas is a symbol of endurance, his myth also teaches us about the inevitability of fate. In Greek mythology, the gods and titans are subject to forces much larger than themselves. These forces determine their fates, often in ways that seem beyond their control. Atlas, despite his immense strength, couldn't escape his punishment because he was caught in the grand web of fate, the very fabric of the cosmos. His punishment wasn't just about him as an individual. It was about the cosmic order, the balance between the old and the new, between the Titans and the Olympians. And as much as he tried to escape, as much as he longed for freedom, Atlas was bound by a fate he could never outrun. And yet, there's a certain dignity in Atlas's acceptance of his fate. While he may not have chosen his task, he continues to carry it out, unwavering. In that sense, Atlas's myth isn't just about suffering, it's about the quiet heroism of accepting what cannot be changed and carrying on, no matter how impossible the task seems. It's about the strength to endure, not for personal gain or glory, but for the greater good. In a world where so much of life is uncertain, Atlas's steadfastness becomes a beacon of resilience, a reminder that sometimes our greatest strength lies in simply continuing, even when the journey seems endless. But even though Atlas is bound by fate, there is a certain freedom in his endurance. The very fact that he continues, despite the weight of the sky, speaks to the power of the human spirit. While we may not be able to escape our burdens, we can choose how we carry them. And in that choice, we find freedom. Atlas may never be free of the sky, but he is free in his ability to bear it with dignity, with strength, and with grace. His burden may never lighten, but the way he carries it makes him a hero, a symbol of what it means to endure and persist no matter the cost. As we come to the end of Atlas's story, it's clear that his fate is not one of despair, but of endurance. His story is a timeless one that speaks to the universal human experience. We all face burdens, we all struggle, and we all face moments when the weight of the world feels unbearable. But in Atlas, we find a reminder that our strength lies not in our ability to escape our burdens, but in our ability to bear them with resilience, with dignity, and with purpose. The heavens may never lighten for Atlas, but in his struggle, he becomes a symbol of hope, of endurance, and of the quiet heroism that exists in each of us. His story is not just about a titan carrying the sky. It's about each of us carrying our own heavens, finding the strength to endure, and continuing on, no matter the weight we bear.